Good morning, everyone. It is I, your man Nipun Sharma. It is currently 2:51 a.m. in London, and welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be a bit of a unique video, and probably the only one of its kind in quite a while. Now, because I was so busy earlier today, because of educational stuff and college-related work, I had no time to react to my FA Cup predictions from round 3 and do a predictions video for round 4. And as a result of that, the first match of round 4 has already been played. It was non-league side Chorley facing Wolves at home, and it resulted in a 1-0 win for the Premier League side, and I actually predicted them to win 1-2. I predicted that Chorley would score. So with that being said, as a compensation for me forgetting earlier today, I will be reacting to my FA Cup predictions from round 3 and giving my predictions for round 4 of the remainder of the games, if that makes any sense. So yeah, reacting to round 3 and predicting the rest of the fixtures for round 4 in this video. So with that being said, here are my reactions to round 3 of the FA Cup. Now, the first game was Aston Villa against Liverpool. I predicted a 2-1 win for Liverpool. It ended Aston Villa 1, Liverpool 2. So yeah, I got the result correct, but not the scoreline. Now moving on to the next fixture, which was another Premier League fixture. Wolves against South London side Crystal Palace. I predicted Wolverhampton Wanderers 3, Crystal Palace 2. It ended Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Crystal Palace 0. So I predicted 2 correct results, but so far no correct scorelines. Now the next game, Everton versus Rotherham United. I predicted that this would be an easy win for Everton. I actually predicted 6-0 in normal time. In fact, Everton, it ended 2-1 after extra time. Cheng Tosun, the Germany-born Turkish international, scored 9 minutes in, putting the Merseyside club 1-0 up. Then in the 56th minute, Matthew Olsunday levelled the score. And then in extra time, in the 93rd minute, Abdoulaye Doucouré, former Watford player, put the Toffees 2-1 up, and that eventually ended up being the winner, thus sending them to the 4th round. So yeah, Rotherham did put up a good fight, but ultimately Everton were favourites and Everton got through. but it could have been an upset. Boy, there are so many upsets in the FA Cup. Well, in football in general, football's an unpredictable game. Now moving on to the next fixture, which was Boreham Wood versus Millwall. I predicted that Boreham Wood would lose this game. I predicted that Millwall would win this game. I predicted Boreham Wood 1, Millwall 3. It ended up Boreham Wood 0, Millwall 2. Now moving on to the next game, a championship fixture. It was Luton Town versus Reading. I predicted that it would end 1-1 after extra time and Reading would go through on penalties. It ended 1-0 Luton, and they went through after 90 minutes. So yeah, Luton went through on that game, despite me thinking that it would be Reading. But we move on. The next game, another championship fixture, Nottingham Forest versus Cardiff City. Now, I predicted that Nottingham Forest would win this game. My prediction was Nottingham Forest 3, Cardiff City 2. It ended Nottingham Forest 1, Cardiff City 0. So another win. So far I've only predicted one wrong result, but so far no correct score lines. So yeah, Nottingham Forest 1, Cardiff City 0. Now the next game was Norwich City versus Coventry City. So basically a city derby. I predicted that Coventry City would win this fixture because I thought that Norwich would keep their eyes on getting back to the Premier League. But no, I predicted Norwich City 1, Coventry City 2. It ended Norwich City 2, Coventry City 0. And now this was the biggest upset from round 3. Non-league side Chorley taking on Championship side Derby County. Now I predicted that Derby County would win this one. Despite the fact that they were playing their youths, I still thought they had enough in their arsenal to beat the non-league side. But upsets do happen, and Chorley were the better team on the day. And they won. So I predicted Chorley 1, Derby County 6. It ended Chorley 2, Derby County 0. Wow. The next game was Championship side Blackburn Rovers versus League One side Doncaster Rovers. I believe they're in League One. Don't quote me on that. Let me check actually, so that I know I'm not chatting rubbish. If the table wants to load. Yeah, I believe they're a League One side. Now, I predicted that Blackburn would win 3-1. In fact, it ended Blackburn Rovers 0, Doncaster Rovers 1. The next game was Premier League side West Bromwich Albion and they took on League One side Blackpool Town. Another forgotten Premier League team, believe it or not. They were in the Premier League for the late half of the 2000s, Blackpool. So, I predicted that Blackpool would get knocked out and West Bromwich Albion would win. I predicted Blackpool 1, West Bromwich Albion 2. In fact, it ended... In fact, it was Blackpool 2, West Bromwich Albion 2, Blackpool Town advanced on penalties. Now the next game, Wycombe Wanderers versus Preston North End. Now I predicted that Wycombe Wanderers would actually go through on penalties. So I predicted 1-1 after extra time for Preston North End and Wycombe Wanderers. And I said that Wycombe Wanderers would go through on penalties. In fact, after full time, Wycombe Wanderers 4, Preston North End 1. Another upset in the bag. Now, moving on to the next game, which was Fulham versus Queen's Park Rangers, a West London derby. I predicted Fulham 3, Queen's Park Rangers 1. And it ended Queen's Park Rangers 0, Fulham 2. So I predicted another correct result. But so far, I don't think I've predicted a correct scoreline. Now moving on to the next fixture, Stevenage versus Swansea City. I predicted that Stevenage would lose this game. And yeah, Stevenage 1, Swansea City 3. It ended Stevenage 0, Swansea City 2. Now, moving on to the next game, Burnley versus Milton Keynes Dons. Now, I predicted that Burnley would go through. I predicted Burnley 3, Milton Keynes Dons 0. And it ended after full time, Burnley 1, Milton Keynes Dons 1. Stayed 1-1 after extra time. Burnley then went through on a penalty shootout. Now the next game was Bristol Rovers versus Sheffield United. Now I predicted that Bristol Rovers would actually knock Sheffield United out because they would put all their eggs in one basket and try to do a miracle and survive relegation from the Premier League, which is not happening, by the way. They are 100% getting relegated. Sorry if I have upset any Sheffield United fans, but yeah, they were so bad this season. And I have nothing against Sheffield United. It's just that second season syndrome kicks in, and it's hurt them really badly. Now, with that being said, I predicted Bristol Rovers 3, Sheffield United 2. In fact, I got the scoreline right, but I predicted the wrong winner. In fact, it was Bristol Rovers 2, Sheffield United 3. Now, moving on to the next fixture, Bournemouth versus Oldham Athletic. I predicted that Bournemouth would win this one. I predicted Oldham Athletic 1, Bournemouth 4. The actual result was Bournemouth 4. I completely forgot that they were the home side. Yeah, Bournemouth 4, Oldham Athletic 1. So yeah, I believe this is the first prediction that I got right with the correct scoreline. Now moving on to the next fixture, Stoke City versus Leicester City. So basically an East Midlands derby. So I predicted that Leicester City would win this one. I predicted a clean sheet and that Leicester City would score 4. Would score 3, rather. So yeah, I predicted Stoke City 0, Leicester City 3. In fact, I was quite close. It was Stoke City 0, Leicester City 4. Now moving on to the next game. Exeter City versus Sheffield Wednesday. I predicted that Sheffield Wednesday would win this game. I predicted Exeter City 1, Sheffield Wednesday 2. Now the actual result, Exeter City 0, Sheffield Wednesday 2. Now moving on to the next game, a Premier League clash. Arsenal versus Newcastle United. I predicted Arsenal 4, Newcastle United 3. I predicted that the game would actually finish at the full-time whistle with that scoreline. But it went to extra time, and with 2 goals from Arsenal, one from Arsenal's academy graduate, Emile Smith-Rowe, and the other from veteran striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Both goals in extra time, by the way, put the North London side 2-0 up, sending them current holders to the 4th round. That Emile Smith-Rowe, if he continues his performances like this, week in, week out, he could be called up he could have himself a late call up for the Euros later this year. So yeah, with that being said, it actually finished Arsenal 2, Newcastle United 0. Now moving on to the next game, Brentford versus Middlesbrough. Now I predicted that Brentford would win this game, and my scoreline prediction was Brentford 2, Middlesbrough 1. In fact, it ended Brentford 2, Middlesbrough 1. So I have correctly predicted 2 scorelines. Now moving on to the next fixture, Huddersfield Town versus Plymouth Argyle. I predicted that Huddersfield Town would win 2-1. It ended in an upset. I predicted Huddersfield Town 2, Plymouth Argyle 1. It ended Huddersfield Town 2, Plymouth Argyle 3. So they are now through to round 4. Now moving on to the next game, Manchester United versus Watford. I predicted that Manchester United would win this game. I predicted Manchester United 3, Watford 0. It ended Manchester United 1, Watford 0. So another correct result predicted. Oh boy, here comes another upset. A giant killing. Crawley Town versus Leeds United. Now, I predicted that Leeds United would completely batter them. I predicted 3-0 Leeds United. It ended 3-0 Crawley Town. Well done. That was actually something I wasn't expecting. But we all love an upset from time to time. Now, moving on to the next game, which was Bristol City against Portsmouth. Now, I predicted Bristol City would win. Bristol City 2, Portsmouth 1. And yet again, another correct scoreline. Bristol City 2, Portsmouth 1. That was the actual scoreline. Now moving on to the next game, a League 2 fixture, Cheltenham Town versus Mansfield Town. I predicted that Mansfield would advance on penalties after a 1-1 draw after extra time. And it ended Cheltenham Town 2, Mansfield Town 1 after the full-time whistle. Now, moving on to the next game, Chelsea versus Morecambe. Now, this was a game I thought would have a lot of goals in it. And boy did it have goals, but not as crazy as I thought. I predicted Chelsea 8, Morecambe 5. The actual result, Chelsea 4, Morecambe 0. Now, the only reason I predicted that Morecambe would score was because we had that clown Kepa in goal. And I was like to myself, clean sheets, wanting to keep a clean sheet with Kepa is trying to pour vegetable oil into boiling water and expecting nothing bad to happen. So yeah, that's why I expected that we would concede. And now moving on to the next fixture, Manchester City versus Birmingham City. Now, I predicted that it would be a high-scoring game with Manchester City ultimately getting through. I predicted Manchester City 3, Birmingham City 2. It ended Manchester City 3, Birmingham City 0 after full time. Now moving on to Barnsley versus Tranmere Rovers. Now, I predicted that Barnsley would go through. I predicted Barnsley 3, Tranmere Rovers 0. It ended Barnsley 2, Tranmere Rovers 0. So not too far off. I still predicted a win. Now, moving on to the next game, Marine versus Tottenham Hotspur. I predicted that it would end with a Tottenham Hotspur victory, but Marine would score. I predicted Marine 1, Tottenham Hotspur 7. It ended Marine 0, Tottenham Hotspur 5. Although that one player was clipped the bar. Now moving on to Newport County versus Brighton and Hove Albion. I predicted that Brighton would win. And this was the scoreline I predicted. Newport County 3, Brighton and Hove Albion 5. It ended after extra time, Newport County 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 1, and then Brighton went through on penalty shootouts. Now moving on to Stockport County versus West Ham United. Now I predicted that West Ham would win this one 4-0. It ended Stockport County 0, West Ham United 1. Now moving on to the final game of the third round of the FA Cup. Southampton versus Shrewsbury. I predicted Shrewsbury Town 1, Southampton 5. It ended Southampton 2, Shrewsbury Town 0. Now that fixture was rescheduled. Now moving on to round 4 of the FA Cup. Chorley versus Wolves, which has already been played, and that ended in a 0-1 win for Wolves. And I even predicted a win for them. I predicted that they would win 1 goal. I predicted that they would win 1-2. Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, the next match, which is going to be played in a few hours, Southampton versus Arsenal. And that match, it takes place at St. Mary's. So it's Holders versus Southampton. Saints versus Gunners. I am going to say Southampton 1, Arsenal 2 after extra time. So I haven't said this before. I will be taking extra time and penalties into consideration. So the next game is Brighton and Hove Albion versus Blackpool. Now, considering what they did, Blackpool, considering what they did to West Bromwich Albion in the previous round, I wouldn't put it past them to knock the Seagulls out as well. But I am actually going to say that this is going to be the end of the road for the former Premier League side. I'm going to predict Brighton and Hove Albion 1, Blackpool 0. Now, the following 5 kickoffs are all 3 p.m. kickoffs. Millwall versus Bristol City. So I am going to predict that Millwall go through. I'm going to predict Millwall 3. Sorry, no. Where is it? I'm going to predict Millwall 1, Bristol City 1 after extra time, and Millwall go through on penalties. Now, Barnsley versus Norwich City. I'm going to predict that Norwich City go through. 2-3. Barnsley 2, Norwich City 3. Next match. Sheffield United versus Plymouth Argyle. I'm going to say 4-0 Sheffield United. Next game, West Ham United versus Doncaster Rovers. (2-1) West Ham. So yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 West Ham. Next game, another a championship fixture. Swansea City versus Nottingham Forest. I am going to predict that Nottingham Forest will go through. 1-2. Swansea City 1, Nottingham Forest 2. Now moving on to the next game. Cheltenham Town versus Manchester City. Now I am going to predict it's going to be a very, very easy win for Manchester City. I'm going to say Cheltenham Town 1, Manchester City 5. Now the next fixture is my team, Chelsea versus Luton Town. And keep an eye out for a preview and predicted starting 11 / preferred starting 11 for that game as well. Now I'm going to predict that Chelsea would win this game. But I am not going to underestimate Luton Town. Given the fact that you can never underestimate the lower league opposition. Earlier this week, and even last week, Bayern Munich, yes, that Bayern Munich, the same Bayern Munich that thrashed us last year in the Champions League, the same Bayern Munich that completely annihilated Tottenham at White Hart Lane. That same Bayern Munich team got knocked out of the German DFB Pokal by a Bundesliga 2 side called Kiel. So we cannot underestimate the lower league teams. Similarly, both Madrid teams were knocked out by Spanish third division teams. So we cannot sleep on these lower league teams. But having said that, I do think we can get through this. I'm going to predict Chelsea 3, Luton Town 1. Is that what I said in my notes? Yeah. Chelsea 3, Luton Town 1. Now moving on to the next game, Fulham versus Burnley. Now I predicted a win for Fulham, and this is the scoreline, 1-0. Fulham 1, Burnley 0. The next game, Brentford versus Leicester City. Now this could be a future Premier League fixture. Keep your eyes out on the Championship table. Brentford are doing pretty well at the moment, making amends for last season's playoff defeat. So I am going to predict that Leicester City win, and win comfortably. I'm going to predict Brentford 1, Leicester City 3. Now the big clash, the Northwest Derby. Manchester United and Liverpool at Old Trafford. And that's a 5 p.m. kickoff. Liverpool haven't been in tremendous form lately. And Manchester United have been flying high. But this is a derby, and form goes out the window. I'm going to say Manchester United won, Liverpool won after extra time. And Liverpool go through on penalties. Now the next game, Everton versus Sheffield Wednesday. And I think this is going to be a win for Everton. And they're going to go through to the next round. So I'm going to predict 3-1. Everton 3, Sheffield Wednesday 1. Now the next game, Wycombe Wanderers versus Tottenham Hotspur. And the game is being played at Wycombe's ground. But I don't think but with no fans, I think this is going to be an easy win for Tottenham. Even though there is that risk of the lower league teams beating the Premier League teams or the top flight teams, I'm still going to say that Tottenham go through. Wycombe Wanderers 0, Tottenham Hotspur 3. Now, the last fixture for the fourth round of the FA Cup, it has recently come to my attention that due to a COVID outbreak at one of the team's grounds, I can't remember whether it was Bournemouth or Crawley, it has been rescheduled for another day. And I predicted, but still, I am going to do a prediction nonetheless. I'm going to predict Bournemouth to win. Bournemouth 1, Crawley Town 0. And once all the fixtures once I know everything about all the fixtures, whether FA Cup or Premier League regardless, I will make an announcement video of when those fixtures are being played, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, Bournemouth 1, Crawley Town 0. So yeah, that is the end of this video. This is probably my longest video so far on this channel. So yeah, with that being said, this is the end of this video. Social media is in the description below. Please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications if you haven't already. My next video will be a preview for the Chelsea for the Chelsea game against Luton Town. But, well, that's my next scheduled video anyway. If anything pops up, I will post a video before that as well. So stay tuned for that so stay tuned. for that. Now, with that being said, you have been a wonderful audience, and this is Nipun Sharma signing off. Take care of yourselves. Peace. Up the Chelsea, and London is blue, and Lampard out.